Good morning and welcome to Get Secure. I'm your host, Mike Blangiforti. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Public Relations for Arrow Security, and welcome to our weekly web show. Today we're going to talk about something that's very important, very topical, and it's current events. And a day hasn't gone by that we haven't seen recently about the current terror alert that's in effect right now, and the chatter that the terrorists or alleged terrorists have been heard saying that seems to be a threat to 19 of our embassies, at least, globally. The president has even started to pull, our folks out of these embassies because of the severity and of the intelligence that's come through. Today, I'm happy to have with me an expert panel to talk about the terrorist threat, the current threat, and the impact that it has on society, both locally, nationally, globally, and the decision-making for parents, for families, and essentially what do we do? What are we supposed to do? And so I'm pleased to have with me Pete Curcio,
Good morning.
Arrow Security's Chief of Operations. I'm happy to have with me Arrow Security's Executive Vice President and former Suffolk County Police Commissioner, Richard Dormer. Thanks, Commissioner, for coming on.
Good morning.
And I'm pleased to have with us Executive Director of Operations for Arrow Security, Dennis Cirillo, former NYPD Lieutenant, and law enforcement experts all. Thank you for coming.
Good morning.
So, Pete, I'd just like to start with you. I mean, we're talking about global impacts. We're talking about national impacts, but I also want to talk a little bit about, just families, parents just making decisions about, do we get on that plane? Is this going to interrupt our vacation plans?
Okay.
And getting to that question, what do we do?
Good point, Mike. We're in the height of summer travel season, and there's a couple of things families could and should be doing when considering travel plans. One thing they could do is, if they're traveling abroad, as I am next month, register with the local embassy and let them put them on notice that you're coming. The benefit of that is that once you do that, if there's a problem in town, they know that there's a U.S. citizen on their soil that they have to make some contact with to try to extract out or at least identify that they're safe. The second thing that it's going to do is put you in touch with what they call travel alerts. The embassies, based on security notices, will identify the levels of threat in that particular region and anything unique to that particular region. So you can sign up electronically for what's called a travel alert, and they're up to the minute. So if anything changes, you'll get an email to your BlackBerry or your PDA device saying something has changed, beware of this, or stay away from this area or that area. Another thing it'll do is identify that there is an embassy in town and who you can touch base with. Not every country has an embassy, but they'll be connected to another embassy close to the region, so you can register with that embassy and get information. So that'll give you a good insight into just how, or the security threats in the area you're going to. So assuming that everything is safe and that you made a decision to travel to that destination, there's a couple of things that you can do once your leg's on the ground in that town. Obviously, one of the best things to do is make a copy of everything that's in your wallet or what you're traveling with. So in the event, they put it in a secure place, maybe one copy at home for a relative to access and one copy in your baggage. So if by chance you lose your wallet, you'll have easy access to your passport information, a copy of your passport, where it was issued, things that you wouldn't ordinarily think may come into play with losing your wallet, your credit card information, and anything like that. So you remember, a lot of people may say, especially if I'm traveling with my wife, she may say, I didn't know which credit cards I had, which information I have. If you have a copy of everything, you'll know precisely what you had.
So the closing of these 19 embassies, to speak to your point about, contacting an American embassy before you travel abroad.
Sure, and this
could
is
impact that.
it's more generic, more germane to the Middle East. and maybe not a predominant vacation destination, but I'm also talking about Mexico. I'm talking about the Caribbean, where was a destination of some terrorists through incite. And I'm talking about portal airports like London's Heathrow Airport. So I'm talking about even if you're traveling through or going through, as many families go to Europe, which may be a hub for some of those Middle Eastern cities. Another thing you need to be aware of on overseas travel is that the propensity for pickpocketing is much greater in these destinations than here in the domestic U.S.
Yeah, making people aware of this is, I think, very important.
Oh, absolutely. And some of the tips there, travelers, I always suggest that they carry a dummy wallet. So if they get held up, they can offer up something that may not be their primary. That they don't carry large amounts of cash on them, that they keep the wallet in the front pocket so it's not easily accessible by pickpockets. And I know a lot of victims of pickpockets have felt that they haven't even been roused or don't. I myself was in Spain in Los Ramblas, and a clown that was part of the entertainment was manhandling me trying to find a wallet until I confronted him. But so in these heavy tourist spots, these are things that are happening. They know that people are carrying lots of money. Other things you can do, of course, we're all proud to be Americans, and you want to show your colors, but you may want to refrain from doing that when traveling abroad, because you can incite particular things. Leave the operatives guessing, to what country you're from, because if you have an American flag on any garments you have, it may easily make you a target, because we're not as beloved overseas as we are.
And especially
here.
now with the terrorist threat and what's going on with, crime is real. Crime happens all over the globe, and now things have seemed to become more complex with terrorist threats. And there's a lot of talk about chatter, terrorist chatter, and the chatter. Commissioner, what do they mean by this? What is this chatter that they're picking up?
Well, obviously there's something going on. There's some information that the federal government has, the FBI or Homeland Security people have led them to make this a very drastic safety issue with closing the embassies. So there's something going on with the people that have sworn to kill us. And so everybody should be alert during this time for terrorist attack. They have pledged to kill us. When they say they want to kill us, pay attention to it. Bin Laden said that for years, and nobody took him seriously. And then 9/11 happened. And then suddenly we were awakened to the issue of global terrorism, and also terrorism on the home front. And of course our embassies in foreign countries, certain foreign countries, are very vulnerable because they're isolated. They don't have the security that we do have at home. But this war on terror, by the way, is not going away. We're used to, in America, fighting a war and then it's over and we move on. World War I, World War II, Korea, the Gulf War, Afghanistan. We're claiming that these wars are, they're over. Most of them were. There was a finality to it. But this war on terror is not going to go away.
It seems like a drastic action that the government is taking with what they're doing with these 19 embassies. I've never seen that happen in the past.
Well, proves that the threat has to be credible, Mike. To me, that's what it speaks to.
Yeah, because there's something credible. There's something that obviously the government knows, our intelligence community knows. That I guess we're not sure what it is, but what we can say is, collectively from our background, something serious.
It means something. And when they say chatter, it's intel that they've gathered through many sources, foreign governments, our own intelligence people. And so there must be something to this. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken these drastic measures. As Pete mentioned, people are traveling. Now, a lot of them are not traveling to some of these countries because it's dangerous for Americans. But we have people in these countries, in the embassy compounds, and they move around these cities, these towns, on a daily basis. Some of them have families, And so this is a prudent move on the part of the government, to safeguard our people. Lessons learned. We should learn lessons from prior attacks on the embassy. And so I assume that that's the reason that the federal government is moving so, proactively to keep our people safe and keep our embassies safe.
Yeah.
And as Pete mentioned, people traveling to England, France, Germany, Mexico have to be alert for attacks if they've been identified as Americans.
Right.
And,
And two other things to note, Mike, is
we're
that
vulnerable.
I was going to say that it's no coincidence in my expertise that it's coinciding with the end of the holiest days of Ramadan. So we're
And
we're-
another thought, and you could speak to this, is I just think it's an interesting decision on the part of the government, particularly with the safety of the embassies after what happened in Benghazi. And I think that's, could that have sparked this type of drastic measures?
Yeah, as the commissioner said, lesson learned. There's not an event that won't take place without some footprint of evidence of something going on in most cases. So you have a good indication here that there's some intelligence, strong intelligence suggests that there's a concerted action taking place. So I think it's a good judgment. It doesn't mean that they're not going to regroup, analyze the intelligence, and come back with the more secure force. But at the time, you pick and choose your battles, and this is not one where I think, especially on foreign soil, in a weak position where it would be prudent to stand and wait for something to happen.
And I think we should mention that prior to Benghazi, there was chatter, and we didn't respond appropriately. I mean, that's the allegation now, over the last few months, that we weren't prepared for that we didn't protect our embassy
USS Cole.
and
Sure.
our employees, our people. And so now, people may say that this is an overreaction on the part of the federal government. When it comes to terrorism, there's no such thing as overreaction.
I think it's important for people to realize that what's being said is that this is reminiscent of the chatter that occurred pre-9/11. So I think that's important in itself, that the government is coming out and saying that. Because pre-9/11, we all know what the result of was of that chatter, and
Sure.
we have as much information now, and they're saying it's reminiscent of that fact.
Yeah, and to see the approach by the administration, and we could discuss anything and talk about it, but certainly Benghazi, certainly 9/11, certainly just the global threat that just continues to go on. And not only does it affect us globally, but like I was saying in the beginning of the show, nationally and even locally. Dennis, how does this affect a parent's decision to send their children or go with their children to a sporting event or some type of venue, a concert? There's also these things called soft targets. And could the terrorists be distracting us by the chatter regarding the embassies and then hit a soft target? And then how does that impact a parent's decision to either go with their children or send their children to something that's a venue?
Mike, I think this leads up to the terrorists, why they're doing this. They're trying to get us to disrupt our daily activities, all right, by fear. And I think the important thing is that at home, we feel that we're protected. We have the U.S. government, we have the local authorities, we have private security in place to protect people. So I think, when a parent looks at the current threats, I think they have to take a look and not fear, because that's what the terrorists want.
Sure.
I think you have to go about your daily routine, but you have to have a sense of what's going on around you. You've used the term a number of times. You see something, say something.
Sure.
All right, but I think if you're going to disrupt your daily lives and not do what we all do as Americans and the freedom that was earned that we have, I think you're giving in to the terrorists. So I would suggest parents, locally, nationally, all right, to go about your daily routine. Don't let this affect you. Again, that's not to say not be aware of what's going on around you, but we have government in place, we have local authorities, we have private security in place that are there to protect you, and I think that's important.
Yeah, and I do think that arguably the terrorists are winning if we go about changing our daily routines. That's what they want. They want to instill fear. That's one of their primary objectives, is instill fear. Their main objective, like the commissioner was saying before, is to kill Americans, and that's just a reality. But should it impact how we go about our everyday lives? Certainly, and we're all parents here. We're all parents.
Well, that's
here.
important, Mike, what Dennis just said about going about your daily business and traveling. Pete gave you some tips on when you travel to a foreign country. Our professionals, our military and our private security and our local police departments, from NYPD on down, do a great job of keeping our communities safe so that people can go about their business every day. Dennis mentioned that. So leave it to the professionals to keep you safe, and they've done a great job so far since 9/11. We got to give them a pat on the back for that. And again, this reaction by the federal government to the chatter, which is intel from emails, from telephone records, which is very, very important. Again, foreign governments
From
are
NSA
cooperating.
records.
They're cooperating with us. Federal governments cooperate with the U.S. on a daily basis on this chatter. And so pay attention when a foreign government tells you that there's something going on that they know about. So again, lessons learned from prior experience. Benghazi is a very good example.
Yeah, I mean, but it's safe to say, at least for me, I feel as comfortable as I possibly could feel post 9/11. Reasonably certain that our government, our law enforcement professionals, our intelligence community are truly doing everything that they can to keep us safe. But we can't prevent domestic terror. You can't prevent every instance of terrorism. What concerns me is these what they call the lone wolves and domestic terrorism. The terrorists, the jihadists, the extremists are coming
The
into our
Unabomber, Timothy
community.
McVeigh.
Yeah, they're
Well,
coming.
the
But
the
those
Boston
folks are coming to our
Marathon
community.
bombing is a very good example. I mean, these were people that were in the country legally, and you can't protect 100% from this, which is the unfortunate aspect of living in a democratic society. We have to go about our business every day, and as Dennis mentioned, people should be able to do that. Pete mentioned you should be able to travel, and take precautions, but go about your daily business. Don't let them win by you staying in your home, locking the doors, closing the windows, and never going outside. That's not going to happen in America, and this thing will pass. We don't know everything that our intelligence organizations know. The public does not know everything, and so they keep a very close eye on this chatter, on the information that they get, and they act on it. And I'm sure that there's some security measures being taken under the radar right now that we don't know about.
Oh, I agree 100%. And Pete, one of the concerns that I've always had, and maybe you could speak about it briefly, is this lone wolf terrorist. And maybe some of the folks out there don't know what the lone wolf terrorist is, and maybe you could speak a little bit about
Sure,
that.
Mike, and we're switching from international terrorists to domestic or what we call homebred terrorists. A good example is Timothy McVeigh, who was a Army soldier who learned his craft, so to speak, from the U.S. military. The Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, who was born and raised in the U.S. And quite a genius as well too. Spent time at Ivy League schools, and then went on to devise a plan to send bombs in the mail, and others like that. And it's an idealization of grandeur. It is a hatred for the U.S. government, something that switched over. And with domestic terrorists in Boston, again, it was a hatred for the U.S. government. It's fortunately, these things aren't prevalent or systemic, and an incident like that, other than with Director Mueller from the FBI's outgoing tenure since 9/11, this was the most catastrophic single domestic terrorist events since 9/11. So for 10 or 11 years, we've had a fairly good run. Are these things ever going to go away? You said absolutely not, because as a former warden, as an instructor for the Department of Justice, where there's over 3 million people incarcerated in the United States, evil people, the will of the people will always be prevalent, and it's just law enforcement's job to collect the intelligence, what we call connect the dots, and put these things together. And as a parent, as a business owner, you have to look at risk management. So would I not send my daughter to a marathon event like Boston? I just sent her to the City Field last week, where they had a twilight event where the kids wore glow-in-the-dark bands and ran a 3K run. So the answer is no. I'm going to continue to live my life like Dennis said, and that of my children. But when you get intelligence like what's going on now with the U.S. government, one of the monikers that I like to hang on is plan for the best. Plan for the worst, hope for the best. So if you have intelligence that suggests it's not a good idea to travel abroad, if there's a high concentration of shootings going on at schools, and we've taught this at Dowling and some other colleges, you just take that with a grain of salt, and you eyeball the security, you make your own assessments of what's going on. In some cases you add security. What we like to say in the security business, there's layers of security, there's different deterrents. So if a client doesn't have security, before I get to security, I say you may want to improve the lights, you may want to do an alarm system, you may want to do things like that. I take the same approach with my children and those domestic type terrorists. I'm not overly concerned that any one individual or alone, somebody sending dangerous substance into the mail and things like that are going to harm my children, because those are so far apart. But overall, from a security perspective, I'll look at the risk management aspect of that. And to be quite honest, and not to diminish anything going on with terrorism, but 52,000 people die each year in car accidents across the U.S. So I'm a lot more concerned about placing my children in a car than the occurrence of a terrorist
and good
attack.
point. That's a good point. And we were talking about if you see something, say something. It's a saying now that's been around as long as I think the MTA originally came out with it. And we saw, I think, an example of that. And Dennis, you remember the Times Square threat, where you had another terrorist, and all things that are available to anybody. There was propane, there were some homemade explosives, and it was a street vendor, right? That, what,
if it wasn't for that street vendor, who knows what would have happened? They took the ordinance, they exploded it within a confined area in the I believe it was in the bomb squad area,
Yes.
and that ordinance could have done some amount of damage in Times Square. So again, speaking of seeing something, saying something, is very important.
I mean, and that's what a terrorist does. They want to kill as many of us as possible. But interesting topic today. Certainly something that we need to discuss more in the future. And we're going to continue to talk about terrorism and how to keep our folks safe. Again, locally, nationally, globally. This panel of experts that's available to us in a moment's notice is a tremendous resource for all of you folks that are kind enough to tune in.
And Mike, I just want to point out, aside from the show, we're pretty passionate about what we do here at Arrow Security. So if anybody out there has any concerns or anything they want to bounce across us, of course, we're not going to charge for anything like that. We'd just be happy to talk to them and to kind of steer them in the right direction, help with the vacation plans, put them in touch with the right people, whether it's international, whether it's here in Suffolk County with the Commissioner's expertise, or related to anything else in the security type industry.
Yeah, I mean, we're here to help. We're accessible. This web show is just one way to get the word out. So, stay tuned in to Get Secure on a weekly basis. We stream live every Monday morning at 10 a.m. Special thanks to Blue Chip Marketing and the Daily Blue. That's how you can catch this web show. So if you didn't see it live, log on to the Daily Blue, that's BLU.com, to catch this show and all of the previous episodes of Get Secure. So I just want to thank my panel today, Pete Curcio,
Thank you, Mike.
Commissioner Dorma, Dennis Cirillo. Thank you all for coming on. So I'm your host, Mike Blangiforti. Thanks for tuning in to Get Secure with Arrow Security. And remember, Get Arrow, get secure. Have a great week, everybody.